Right. Just give yourself a couple of moments standing. So the basic posture is always the feet hip width apart, but that has some variation between the inside of your foot giving you slightly wider and the outside of your foot. So you've got a little bit of leeway there depending on just what suits your hips. Toes pointing forward as much as possible. Weight a little bit forwards and hips just dropping back. And then turning in the center of your body. So you want to be able to feel the movement in the center of your body. It's a fairly big movement at this point. You can see if I put my hand over my belly, you can see my hand moving. And if you place your hands on your hips a little bit, you should be able to feel a little bit of movement there. With experience, you may notice that that area stops, maybe the shoulders come around a little bit more, but keeping in your back and your shoulders and around your hips, this sort of elastic quality in your muscles. So you go in one direction and the resistance to the direction builds up, and you get to know when to allow the return movement to come. And if you do nothing, which is quite difficult, then it'll just happen of its own accord. But in practice, what we often do is we get to a certain point and then we try and go a bit further. So it's really just trying not to do that. As you warm up a little bit and the muscles in your torso become a bit more supple, with the blood supply going through them, then you'll find that you're able to move a little bit further, both in the center of your body and with that slight extension through your back into your shoulders. This is a very natural process. It's not something you have to make happen, but you sort of observe that happening. Very loose at the beginning in the shoulders and your arms, so they just flop around. And what you should find is that they will tend to fall in the same place each time. So when you turn your rear arm round about the wrist area will strike round about this area where your spine meets your pelvis, and the front hand will either fall over this area here, so spleen type area, or here, the liver. And then just begin to imagine doing this in water, and that would start to change the nature of the movement. It will feel stronger, more intentful, but still not changing particularly where your hands fall. But that idea of imagining the resistance begins to have an effect on your body in the same way that opening a gate or a door that swings nice and easily is a bit different to opening one that's a bit stiff and requires a bit more of a push. And then raising your arms a little. And the position for your arms, if I come close, I'll stop them moving. See, my hand is about shoulder height. It may be lower than that, but your elbow is definitely hanging down. So it's almost like your arms being sort of held up from the ceiling. and that helps your shoulders to soften. And at the same time, of course, it releases the muscles in your arms to maintain the shape. They're not having to strain to hold their arms up. And then just let your hands drop down. To refine this basic posture, just rolling your weight forwards and backwards a little bit. Seeing how far you can go before you sort of stiffen up or have to take a step in each direction. Letting your hips drop, getting the feeling of your pelvis hanging from the spine, or if you prefer this feeling of lower back, hips and buttocks overhanging like you're just sitting on the top part of a fence. And what you may notice, you place your hands back and front as you go through this movement front to back. Your pelvis will just adjust very, very slightly. These are important movements for us, particularly as we grow older. That really, if I exaggerate a little bit, if I go forwards, you can see I'm angling forwards. If my pelvis is tilted back and my bottom's sticking out, I'm kind of falling forwards. But if I can let the pelvis tuck under, then I'm more stable. But when I go back, that's going to have me over. So this sort of movement, again, this is exaggerated, but this sort of movement is taking place as we move through the center and then slightly forwards and then slightly back. If I show you with this stick, it's that which is happening forwards and backwards. Again, that's exaggerated, and we want to see if we can find this point. In theory, I could leave that there. In practice, it's a lot harder, but there is a line that goes through with the pull of gravity, and we just want to find where that line is and gradually come to rest. So this is the central point, central equilibrium. We're not necessarily in that point the whole time. See if you can get a sense for where the weight is focused. And ideally, what we're looking for in the long term is that point will be just behind the ball of each foot. So in fact, slightly forwards. And again, that encourages this movement, this gentle dropping back. So we achieve several things when we do that. Well, we've got a stance that encourages the sinking of our hips, the sinking of our center of gravity. We get a longer feelings through our back. We're quite well settled, but at the same time, we're very close to the point where we would take a step forward. So a combination of what we might call stillness and movement, which is very typical of Tai Chi. And that stronger feeling in your legs, going up through your back, allowing the front of your body, belly, solar plexus, ribs, shoulders, to just drop slightly. And what we develop over a period of time is a muscle tone that supports that posture, both front and back. Not pulling your belly in, because that would, if I stand here, if you look at my hips, when I pull my belly in, that sort of pushes the pelvis around and it tightens up in the middle of the body. And we want that feeling of space that comes with the posture. So this is our reference point, if you like. We move out of this and back into it, and move through it as we've just been doing. And some of the movements, quite a lot of the movements, will kind of challenge us to maintain this quality. So what we're looking for in the end is through the mechanics, through the sort of awareness of the technical side of the posture, we become very familiar with the feeling, a quality within the body, of spaciousness, or something that allows movement, that is well grounded, and yet at the same time quite open in the upper part of the body. The space for breathing and all sorts of different internal movements. And this is the feeling we're trying to cultivate in slightly different postures. So for the first exercise, let your weight sink back. Now this will involve your pelvis being allowed to tuck under a little bit more. You get a stronger feeling of root, and then you get pushed up. So the root starts to drop more. We get this feeling of our center of gravity going deeper into the ground. At the same time, we're using the springiness of the legs to load the movement so that eventually they push us back up to the top position, by which time gravity is ready to take over and pull us down again. So now we have this vertical movement between the top position we were just looking at quite closely and as low down as you can comfortably get. Bring your arms around in front of you and let that movement move your arms for you. Upper body expanding a little bit and contracting. And expanding and contracting. And the expansion is all the way through your body, just like a spring when it expands. It's not just one part of the spring, it's the whole spring. We get that feeling going up to our legs, into our hips, and from there up to our spine, but also expanding outwards a little bit through the sides and front and back of our upper body. There's a sort of a bit like blowing up a balloon. When you blow up a balloon, you know, you get one of these, just an ordinary round balloon, and you blow into it. It expands evenly in all directions. And that's how you really want to feel this movement, particularly in the upper part of your body. So the posture that we take allows this, and therefore the posture that we take allows for this sense that our whole body begins to become part of any one movement in one way or another. And then wild goose. So here we take advantage of the sideways expansion to push our arms out sideways and just let them swing up from our shoulders. Again, though, you notice my elbows, as in one of the faster exercises we did at the beginning. My elbows are just hanging down slightly. And then hands crossed in front of your belly, heart in the clouds. And going back to that image of the balloon being inflated, if you had your arms around a balloon or a football or something like that as it was being pumped up, this would happen. don't let your hands go forwards. So it's not this as well, but it is to the sides. So your arms being moved, and again, what we get is a movement that, when it's made within the right structure, going back to our posture, means that it leads to this very soft, fluid quality of movement to our body. So these three exercises are good ones to start with because they're quite simple, but we can begin to take our attention within our body and feel the sort of dynamic qualities, the movement, the energy, moving in a particular way, always following this pattern of expansion and contraction, which is common to all the movements. So then our upper body, in particular our arms, but other parts of the upper body as well, of course, begin to use that movement in various ways according to the particular exercises. So the muscles of our arms, for instance, as I hinted earlier, when they're part of the movement, they also are extending and contracting, but they're also creating a shape within that overall pattern. So now let your hands drop down, feel the weight of your arms hanging. And next time you push up on one side, focusing on the expansion, raising your hand, wind your arm around and pull down. On the other side. This is Dragon Plucks the Stars from the Sky. One more on each side. Now, I'm going to come a little bit closer so you can see a bit better. Let your hips sink and just place your hands on your hips again and turn in a little bit from side to side and see if you can feel this area here, hips, lower back, buttocks, that kind of area. Just the play of the muscles in that area. Try and get that feeling of your hips dropping back. And when you do this, the shoulders obviously will move. And again, over a period of time, you may find that if I turn here, this is as far as my hips will go without putting my knees out of line or anything like that. But my shoulders can go a little bit further. I'm fine there. But as soon as I go to there, I can feel the tightening beginning. And just hold one hand out in front and notice that as your body turns, it moves your arms for you. You may notice here where your arm meets your torso, there's a little bit of a similar kind of feeling to the ones that you get in the hips. We're going to use this movement for pushing in 4 directions. If you go back a bit, just hold your arms out to the sides for a moment. Until you see how my hands move. Notice. Yeah. So, the 4 directions we're going to push in. Start with your hands by the sides of your hips. First of all, pressing up a little. Nice and long in your back. Back down, hands to your sides. And then lifting slightly and pushing out. And this time, a little bit of a turn. And back. And the other direction. And back. And then facing forwards and pushing out. So those are the 4 directions. Always coming back to the center before you start again. Expanding and contracting. So that middle part of the body goes a long way towards directing the movement. And although obviously, I said earlier, our arms are very involved in the shaping, the expression of the movement, this part of the body, the center, is also the kind of focal point for that. So there's like a kind of communication between, I suppose you could say, our brain, where obviously a lot of physical instructions start, move out through the rest of the body. It's like the sort of control room in a way of the body, like a telephone exchange or something like that. So between there and the center part of the body, which also has a similar kind of function in Tai Chi. The old writings in Tai Chi, some use a phrase, they say, our mind is like the commander of an army. Not so much now, of course, it's very different, but in the times when that was written, the commander of the army would maybe be on top of a hill somewhere so they could see the whole scene, and then get a sense of what was going on. And the center of the body, hips and waist, described as the banner. The banner would lead the army. So the commander would send instructions to the banner, and the banner would move and the army would follow, and then information would come back from the people in the vanguard of the army with the banner, and maybe change things or whatever. So the area between hips and waist not only is the area we want to drop down into the ground, but is a very strong point of focus for us in terms of creating the shapes of the movements for the body to follow. And as the kind of pivot point for a movement like this, the hub of the wheel, or the fulcrum of a seesaw or something like that, it's also one of the key areas that we focus on to get that sort of sense of quieting and stillness in the mind. Really from there down to the ground is where we would bring our attention back to just settle our minds a little bit. And if we practice bringing our attention there, we get better at it, like most things that we practice. And it's important to think about this in Tai Chi. If you're not practicing bringing your attention to that part of your body, then you're encouraging your attention to be elsewhere. So one more round. Your hands drop down, and then pushing out one side, your arms swinging above your head, and then down. And the other side. And then if it's comfortable, once your hand reaches that top position, once again, you turn. And then change sides. And then adding the turn. Now, this time, just letting your hands drop down, sinking down and pushing up, and thinking about another plane of rotation in the center of your body, which is a vertical rotation. It's like you're rolling forward, rolling the pelvis forwards, and then letting it drop back and pushing up. And as we discovered earlier, there's a relationship between the angle of our upper body and the alignment of our pelvis. And if we deliberately tilt our pelvis one way and then another, we change the angle of the upper body. So we can come upright by an adjustment in our pelvis, and then let your arms follow, rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Be careful with your knees and your back. Just go as far as you're comfortable. Feel what's happening, your back and your spine, and we're not wanting to stiffen up. And then combining the vertical and the horizontal movements, you turn, push your hips back, Push your hands forward. This is polishing the table. The last one was rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. One more time. And drop your hands down. So we slowly bring about a change in how we focus our attention into our body. Change from it just being completely unconscious. A lot of the time we move around and we're not that aware of what's going on in our body, to one that is much more deliberate, much more aware, and eventually that will stay with you outside of the sessions. It's not like you'll be walking down the road thinking, oh, I'm going to move that arm there. It'll just be there in the background, which means that over a course of time, you're just more likely to take good posture, to walk well, and so on and so forth. And we focus specifically into the center of the body, rather than have too much emphasis on our arms and our hands, because when we move in the center of our body, we affect all parts of the body. And that also, as I was explaining, has this sense of just grounding our attention a little bit. Again, to quote one of the old writers in Tai Chi, we seek the stillness within the movement. So this calmer quality, this more centered quality that we associate with Tai Chi is more likely to stay with us when we're busy doing something, or just in our daily lives and so on. So all of the movements really should contain those sort of elements. So slightly more complicated. Bring your feet together, turn your toes out to about 45 degrees, push your heels out to about 45 degrees and turn your toes out again. So about 1.5 times the previous stance, and just let your hips drop down. Move your weight from side to side. You're going to about 60% of your weight in each leg. And again, feel what's happening in your hips. In particular, in this part of the hip at the front, this little sort of valley called the Kwa, KWA. Move into your left foot and turn to the left, and you'll feel your fingers being pinched slightly as the valley gets narrow. Go across and turn this way. There's all sorts of ways that you could turn, by the way. So this is the basic movement for the next couple of exercises. So move your weight into your right foot. Have your right hand holding, so it's resting on top of a ball in front of your right shoulder, left hand underneath. Push in to your left and turn, and let that movement swing your left hand out. Top hand pushes down to the hip below. Coming back, hold the ball and move across. Just parting the wild horse's mane. Weight in your left, moving into your right. Open across the chest and torso. And when you come back, that same sense of opening from your shoulder down your back to the opposite hip. Imagine if you had an elastic band around your body, diagonally across your body in each direction. Here it will be expanding at the front and then contracting, and as it contracted at the front, it will be expanding at the back. So a part in the wild horse's mane. One more of these, and then essentially we're going to do the same movement to start off the next exercise, but it's a little bit more complicated. But the main thing is to think about what your weight is doing. So your weight goes into your left foot as before, but now it stays there. But you get the same sense of contraction across the front of your body, same movement in your hips. So your upper body turns. Notice how that brings your left hand across, and it brings your right hand into the left elbow, and then you pull back, drawing your right fingers up, turn towards your left hand, hold a ball between your left hand and push forwards. Bring your weight back, drop your right hand down so you're holding the ball, and then back into your left. Same thing on the other side. Weight into your right leg, chest opening and closing as the body turns, and then you pull back and push forwards. This is called Y-tape office food. Think about what's happening in your weight and in the center of your body. Your weight moves into your left leg, center turns to your left. Weight stays in the left leg, center turns to the front. You pull back into your right leg, center turns to the left again, and you push your weight into the left. When you come back into the right, you turn to the right and let that movement drop your right hand down and go back into the left. Now this time, go into the right and the chest opens. You leave the weight in the right, but let the chest close and feel how that helps your body. It was part of the turn. Pull back into your left foot, turn towards the right and push through, and then into your right foot. Drop the left hand down and back into your right leg. Y-tape office food. As you get more experienced at this, you can begin to feel what's happening in your shoulders, your hips, your elbows, like you're pushing into something. So that comes just before your arm swings out. Imagine trying to push through a door that was quite heavy. You push in and then you turn, push your hand through. The order of the movement, your weight changes, your center begins to turn. The weight stays where it is, but the center moves, then weight moves, center turns and push forwards. Your arms following that movement. And underlying this pattern of expansion, yang, contraction, yin. Expansion, yang, contraction, yin. One more on each side. Okay, good. And shake out. So it's quite a complex exercise, but now let's go back to something a bit simpler. Have your right foot forwards, keep the width of your step, have about the same in terms of length. And now, once again, transferring your weight, but from front to back. And when you do this, just be careful you don't overextend this knee. So you stop when there's no more than 60% of the weight in the front leg, maybe as much as 70 in the back leg. And your pelvis remaining level. So going back to what I was saying earlier about the upright stance, if I use this pole as an example, you see, it remains straight. If I lean, then I start to, if I let the pelvis tilt, I start to come out of line. Not everything that we do maintains that line, as we saw with rowing a boat and polishing the table earlier. But when we're in this posture, we're trying to maintain that. That means pushing from the legs. This is quite difficult because, again, one of the habits that we have in ordinary walking, and it's a useful habit actually, but is to go forward slightly with the shoulders, take our center of gravity forward. But here I'm in quite a precarious position. The thing that in ordinary walking will sort of counter that, will help to neutralize that and kind of put the brakes on a little bit when you need it, is that same feeling, the hips dropping back that I talked about earlier. So again, it's quite useful. But for this exercise, you're very much using your legs to push yourself forwards. Because riding a bicycle, when you ride a bicycle, you push down on the pedals. And if you do lean a little bit on a bike, you soon find out that if you lean too far, you hit the ground. So there are limits to how far we can do that. And the bike is propelled not by your arms, but by your legs. So this is an important component in ordinary walking. It's also one of the key movements and stances that we use in Tai Chi. Now just raising your toes and your heel. More of your weight will now begin to settle in to your legs without you needing to lean. Letting your center of gravity drop. And then just bring your foot in and push back out. Feel the weight of your leg as it swings from your hip. And then on the other side. This will transfer your weight, what we would call fixed step. And then raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. And then, depending on which direction you want to go in, just stepping through either forwards or backwards, making sure you get the foot in the correct position each time. Try the other direction. Right foot forwards. And this time when you transfer your weight, let your arms swing behind the movement. You have they swing like pendulum swinging from a clock. This fisherman cast a net. Just feel now movements and changes through your back and the front of your body and your shoulders and your arms. Trying to bring your attention to the patterns and changes. Note that your arms swing in a curve. You drop down and then up, and then down, and then up. And this time, when you go back, again, turn in the middle of your body so your arms now swing through and up to about shoulder height. And then as they come down, moving forwards, turn. So you make this little figure of eight movement, sideways figure of eight movement in front of your body. Good, and shake out. Have your left foot forwards and do the same movement again, starting with fisherman castanet. And then turning. Your arms should just naturally swing through a circular movement. So again, just don't overdo the movement. Don't strain in your back or your shoulders or your arms. Just feel the shape emerging from the combination of the transfer of your weight and the turn in the center of your body as with some of the previous exercises. This time, if you turn your front foot out just a little bit, you go forwards. And now as you turn, let that movement bring your back foot in. Your arms swing up. Step out with your empty foot and forwards. Into the middle again with your foot. Step and push through. Take your time. And then don't step this time until you got into the back foot. And now you can change direction. And bring your feet into place. Good. Shake out. Right. So now, rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Onto one shoulder. Your arm. The other side. Onto your back. And around your hips. Light on your belly. Yeah. So our starting point was the basic standing posture, and then through a series of stages, shall we call them? I was going to say steps then, but it's probably a bit confusing. You know, we start to turn in the center of our body. We turn in different planes. We literally step forwards or backwards. We move the weight and so on and so forth. And by building those up, we actually get quite a range of patterns and movements. So the starting point is the one that we come back to with the exercise Embrace Tiger, Return to Mountain. And remember, that starting point isn't just about the physical aspect of the posture, though that is important, but also that sense of grounding, of quieting, centering, however you think about it. So Just come into the posture, feet parallel, hips hip width apart, hips sinking back, sinking down just a little, and then pushing up, expanding, and then contracting. First of all, your arms coming around, and then drawing in, and then sinking down. This is the return to the mountain. One more time. And stand. Give your legs a shake. Thank you very much. That was lovely. Well, I enjoyed it anyway. I hope other people did.